In just 11 minutes, uncover 10 shocking takeaways from historian Dominic Sandbrook's conversation on trigonometry. Find out why Stalin killed more, but Hitler is called the worst, the dark truth about human nature, and how utopian idealists became history's deadliest killers. Takeaway 1. Why Hitler is seen as worse than Stalin. Dominic Sandbrook and the host discussed why Adolf Hitler is remembered as the most evil man in history, even though Joseph Stalin killed more people. Stalin's policies of purges, forced labor camps, and man-made famines caused the deaths of tens of millions. Mao Zedong in China killed even more through famine and violence. Yet in popular memory, Hitler still carries the label of being uniquely evil. Sandbrook explained that part of this is cultural. For Britain, Nazi Germany was the direct enemy in the Second World War, while Stalin's Soviet Union was an uneasy ally. In addition, Nazism feels especially chilling because it involved a cold and organized extermination program that used modern industry to kill millions of people. The Holocaust was not chaotic or accidental, but deliberately planned and carried out with paperwork, trained timetables, and factory-style methods. Sandbrook recalled how one of the most chilling films about this period shows Nazi officials calmly sitting around a table at the Wannsee Conference, discussing how to arrange the logistics of mass murder. He compared this to Stalin's Great Terror, which was horrific but often ad hoc and less industrial in its methods. He said that for many in the West, the image of Hitler and the swastika still represents absolute evil in a way that communism does not. For example, a student wearing a hammer and sickle t-shirt in the 1990s might have been seen as making a strange fashion choice, but wearing a swastika t-shirt would have been unthinkable. This shows how memory shapes the way people judge the scale of crimes. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2, idealists often become the deadliest killers. Sandbrook argued that the most dangerous people in history are not selfish criminals, but idealists who believe they are creating a better world. He said, the biggest killers were utopian idealists. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot all thought they were working for the good of humanity. They did not see themselves as villains, but as heroes of progress. Stalin, for example, believed Marxist ideas were scientific laws, and that purges and forced collectivization were tough steps needed to reach a brighter future. Hitler believed racial struggle was part of nature, and that cleansing society of Jews and others would make Germany stronger and happier. This mindset made them willing to kill millions without remorse. Sandbrook also referred to Margaret Atwood, who once said the real enemy is utopian idealism, because people who think they know exactly how to fix society often justify horrific actions. For example, in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge emptied cities and starved millions because they believed starting again from year zero would create a pure new society. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Truth in history has limits. Konstantin Kisin asked if there can really be such a thing as truth in history when everyone has different perspectives. Sandbrook replied that while many viewpoints can be valid, there are still boundaries. He said historians have a duty to say when something is simply wrong. He gave the example of the Second World War. A British historian might describe it as a victory for democracy and freedom, while a Polish historian could argue that Stalin was the real winner, since Poland ended up under Soviet control. Both accounts show different sides of reality, and both can be useful. But claims that Hitler was the victim of the war or that Churchill was its villain are not just another perspective, they are false. Sandbrook explained, there is such a thing as fact. For example, Holocaust denial is not a valid interpretation. It is simply a lie. This distinction matters because without it, history becomes meaningless and people can twist it to serve dangerous agendas. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. History is often told as good and evil. Dominic Sandbrook observed that modern society has become very moralistic in how it talks about history. He said that many people today demand constant judgment of past figures, often in black and white terms of heroes and villains. He compared this with when he was a student, when it was common to study history in a more neutral way without demanding constant moral verdicts. He said, I was very conscious when I was doing my PhD that a new mood was coming in from America that was much more moralistic. He pointed to debates about Thomas Jefferson's relationship with Sally Hemings as an early sign of this change. Sandbrook explained that violence and cruelty were always part of history and that people in the past often expected this. What has changed is the tone with which events are discussed. Where once people would say that dark things happen in history, now the reaction is shock and outrage, as if cruelty is surprising. For example, during the Indian Mutiny, both sides committed savage reprisals, yet at the time it was not seen as astonishing. Today, the same events are often retold with disbelief that such things could occur. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5, the British Empire is judged without nuance. Francis Foster expressed frustration that the British Empire is often described as the most evil empire in history. Dominic Sandbrook responded that this view shows a lack of historical perspective. He argued that empires are the most common form of human government and that nearly everyone in history has lived under some kind of empire. He said the British Empire was not uniquely evil and in some ways was unusual because it spread ideas of law and liberty that later encouraged its own end. He also pointed out that people forget the violence of other empires, such as the Belgians in Congo or the Aztecs in Mexico. He said, if you had to choose an empire in which to live, the British Empire would be a pretty good place to choose. For example, the Spanish conquest of the Americas led to mass death by disease and slaughter, yet the Spanish wanted workers rather than extermination. In contrast, the Nazis had a deliberate plan of extermination, which makes them stand out as different. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6, great leaders contain contradictions. Sandbrook reminded the host that major historical figures cannot be understood in simple terms. He described Oliver Cromwell as both a ruthless commander and a man who wrestled with his conscience. Cromwell could laugh while leading slaughter in battle, but also worried if he was worthy to rule. Winston Churchill was another example. He made many mistakes, but also had the courage to resist Hitler when others wanted to appease him. Sandbrook said, people are complicated. Cromwell is one of the most fascinating characters in English history. He explained that Churchill knew his own weaknesses, which made him more grounded than fanatical idealists like Hitler or Stalin. For example, Thomas Jefferson in America wrote about liberty while keeping slaves, showing how even admired leaders can live with contradictions. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7, we have lost a sense of the tragic. Sandbrook argued that modern society has forgotten how close we always are to disaster. Earlier generations who lived through wars or constant border changes had a deep sense that life could collapse at any time. Today, people expect peace and stability as the normal state of things. Sandbrook said, they have been completely insulated from the beast in other people and in themselves. He gave the example of the Falklands War, which by historical standards was small and clean. Yet when reports surfaced of soldiers taking gruesome trophies, the reaction was outrage. In previous wars, such actions were grim but not surprising. This loss of understanding, he said, makes us blind to how fragile our civilization really is. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. Human nature drives all of history. Throughout the conversation, Dominic Sandbrook stressed that human nature has not changed. People are always capable of kindness and cruelty, and history is shaped by this fact. He warned that it is dangerous to think we are morally superior to those who lived in the past. He said, knowledge of the beast is so important. Ordinary people can commit atrocities if placed in certain conditions. For example, in Rwanda in 1994, neighbors who once lived peacefully with each other took up machetes and killed entire families when violence broke out. This shows that the capacity for brutality is not confined to dictators but exists in all of us. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9, history shows turmoil always returns. When asked if he worries about the state of the country, Dominic Sandbrook said he does not lie awake at night because he knows from history that turmoil always comes back. He compared it to knowing that winter will always follow summer. He said, there will be wars and disasters, people will always keep behaving badly, and stuff will keep happening. He explained that people born after the Second World War had an unusual period of peace and prosperity, but this was not normal by historical standards. For example, the Great Depression of the 1930s created mass unemployment, and helped bring radical leaders to power, proving that economic hardship and unrest are recurring patterns. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. Stories make history come alive. Dominic Sandbrook finished by reminding the host that what draws people to history is not moral lectures, but stories. He explained that children in particular are fascinated by the extremes of history, such as battles, executions, or sacrifices. He said, "Kids love the violence. They love the gory details that stick in the mind." He argued that it is fine to use these stories as an entry point before moving on to more complex subjects. For example, gladiator fights in the Roman Colosseum remain one of the most memorable images of the ancient world, even though Roman law codes had a much bigger impact on how we live today. Storytelling keeps history alive, and without it, people would not care to learn. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.